Hey there, viewers. What if I told you that Ellen's $50 million, 0 cents mansion isn't just a house? It's a stage that never stopped recording. In this chilling story, a former crew member returns to manage the estate only to uncover something far darker than celebrity secrets. Mirrors don't reflect. Applause comes without an audience. And somewhere deep inside, a cup is waiting, with your name already etched beneath the gold rim. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The house needed silence. My name's Joy, 41, divorced. Used to work lighting crew on daytime shows. Nothing fancy, just rigging and resetting, cleaning up messes nobody on camera had time to acknowledge. I wasn't the type to chase fame, never was. I kept my head down, did the job, and tried not to flinch when someone with veneers snapped their fingers at me. After the Ellen show went dark, things got quiet all over. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone felt it, like the air had shifted, like we'd all just barely dodged something big and mean. The jokes stopped coming. The audience laughter had already been fake. Now even the silence felt rehearsed. I got a call 4 months after cancellation. Private firm, no caller ID. Some lady with a flat voice asked if I'd be open to contract custodial management for a private estate. I said sure. They tripled my old rate and said I could sleep on site. Said it wouldn't be listed publicly. The property was in legacy transition, whatever that meant. I didn't ask questions. I needed the work, and to be honest, I was tired of waiting on union jobs that dried up when people started pointing fingers at the whole damn industry. The address they gave me wasn't on any map. I typed it into Google and it spun like it was thinking too long. Then it kicked me back to a park 3 blocks away. It wasn't until I physically drove to the coordinates, way up in the hills, past places where driveways have gates longer than some strip malls, that I saw it. The mailbox was blank. The number carved into the stone pillar out front just said 73.3. That's not a house number, that's a temperature. The gate opened on its own. I didn't buzz, it just knew. The road up to the house curved in that smug, rich way, wide enough for 2 cars, but lined with hedges so tight you couldn't see over them. The house came into view slow, like it wanted to reveal itself one angle at a time. Big white facade, polished windows, sleek stone stairs, and quiet. No music, no bird calls, not even wind through the trees. It felt like walking into a photograph that hadn't finished loading. Inside, the place was spotless. Not just clean, undisturbed. I've cleaned sets. I know the difference between polished and never touched. There was no dust on the windowsills, but the air smelled faint, like wax and old citrus, like someone had sprayed lemon polish months ago and sealed the room behind them. The first thing I noticed, though, was the temperature. It was cool but not cold, comfortable but not right. I checked the thermostat. 73.3 degrees Fahrenheit. The digits didn't flicker. I clicked it down to 71, then walked off to find the rest of the control panels. 15 minutes later, it beeped and reset itself, back to 73.3. Every time. The mirrors came next. Every room had one. Same frame, wide brushed gold with this strange ripple texture like melted wax. They weren't hung straight either. Every single one tilted ever so slightly upward, like they were trying to catch the ceiling instead of you. I caught my reflection a few times and didn't like it. It wasn't fear, exactly, more like recognition that didn't sit right. Like I looked too still, too framed. I chalked it up to nerves. First days are always weird. I was assigned the caretaker's suite near the back, which had its own kitchenette and a private entrance, pretty swanky for someone like me. The contract said I wasn't allowed in the East Wing unless specifically instructed, something about legacy preservation and staged space integrity. Basically, don't mess with Ellen's stuff unless told otherwise. That night, I made rice in the microwave and sat on the plush, pale gray sofa in the main lounge. No TV, no Wi-Fi, just a stack of magazines that all still had her face on the cover, smiling, every single one. She had the kind of smile that always looked rehearsed to me. Not fake, exactly, just assigned. I slept okay the first night, but I swore the lights dimmed on their own around 3 in the morning. I hummed without thinking, some old work song from years back, and the lights responded. Slight flicker, just enough to make me stop humming. I tested it, hummed again. Same flicker. As soon as I stopped, the lights steadied. The next morning, I did what I always do. Routine. Made rounds, vacuumed corners that didn't need it, polished already shiny surfaces, checked thermostats. All of them still said 73.3, even the one in the guest pool house, disconnected from the main system. I tried to reset the circuit breaker and found that the climate control panel had no physical buttons, just a touchscreen that locked the moment I touched it. Piloting the navigator, Clay said with a puzzled look. Just a touchscreen that locked the moment I touched it. I opened the utility closet near the back hall, one I hadn't gotten to yet, and found a yellowed list taped to the inside of the door. Looked like it'd been there for years, but the ink wasn't faded. Daily reset protocol. Smile count must be maintained. Do not touch the vault behind the east mirror. There was no logo, no letterhead, nothing to suggest who wrote it. I snapped a picture with my phone, but when I checked later, it wasn't in my camera roll. That's when I started to get the itch. You know what I mean. The hair on the neck thing. The throat tighten. The moment you realize you're alone, but not alone enough. I called the firm who hired me. The same flat-voiced woman picked up. I told her about the list. There was a long pause. Not like she was busy, like she didn't know how to lie yet. Then, very softly, she said, "That wasn't meant for you," and hung up. I stood there, holding the phone like it might ring again. It didn't. That night, I didn't eat. I just walked the halls. Every hallway light came on 2 seconds before I reached it. Every door was slightly ajar, like the house was breathing. I started checking the mirrors again. In one of them, in the hallway near the breakfast nook, I caught something that made my blood stop. I turned to walk away, and in the corner of my eye, I saw myself, still standing, not moving. I blinked, turned back fast. The reflection caught up, perfectly in sync. But for those 2 seconds, I swear, it wasn't me moving. I leaned in close, stared at my own eyes. My reflection smiled. I walked backwards out of that hallway. Didn't look back, didn't check the thermostat, didn't turn off the lights. Just locked myself in my room, shoved the chair against the door and sat on the floor, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. I told myself it was the stress. New job, big house, old trauma from working studio sets where people disappear without names. But the house didn't feel like a house. It felt like a set left running too long after the cameras stopped rolling. Like someone had forgotten to yell, "Cut." And somewhere inside those walls, past the mirrors, beyond the sealed east wing, I could feel something rehearsing, waiting. I didn't sleep that night, and by morning the thermostat read 73.3. Then, Chapter 2. She wasn't gone. She was rehearsing. Chapter 2. The Recovery Journey. This is what we've done. We've come back. I don't know why I kept going back into the pantry. It wasn't like I needed anything. I wasn't even hungry anymore, but something about the air in there felt thinner, like you could hear the house breathing through the walls. I thought maybe there was a vent behind one of the panels. Something stuck, or a nest of rodents maybe. But I knew better. This house didn't allow mess. 3 days after the mirror incident, I pulled open a side cabinet near the pantry's bottom row of drawers. It creaked. First sound I'd heard that didn't feel rehearsed. Inside was a panel that looked like the others, except the grain of the wood was slightly off-center. A fake. I tapped it. Hollow. I wedged a butter knife under the edge and popped it open. Behind it, tucked into the wall, was a shaft. Not a vent, a dumbwaiter. No buttons, no rope. Just a small metal platform barely big enough to fit a tray. There were markings etched into the wall above it, like someone had scratched tally lines into the frame and stopped at 33. There was only one floor marked on the shaft label: dressing hall. Not kitchen, not service corridor, not even floor 2, just that one spot. I stuck my head in. The metal was cold, even though the whole house still sat at 73.3 degrees. I pulled back, shut the panel, and stared at it for a long time. Dressing hall. Nobody had said anything about a dressing hall. Later that night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard it. Soft. Above me. Footsteps. There wasn't supposed to be a floor directly overhead. My suite was tucked under the main sitting room, and the ceiling above me led to solid slab. But the steps kept going, measured, slow, like someone pacing in rehearsal. I pressed my hand to the ceiling, felt nothing, but I swear I could hear the shift in weight, like someone changing shoes, turning, stopping, turning again. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out. The house was dim. Lights weren't on auto tonight. They stayed dark until I flipped each switch manually. That hadn't happened before. As I walked past the West Lounge, I noticed something different. The East Wing door, sealed when I arrived, bolted and coded, was ajar. Just a crack, enough to see that the hallway beyond was lit with that warm, unnatural gold, like a spotlight. I told myself not to go in. I even stood there for a minute with my hand on the frame, thinking about all the lines in my contract I hadn't actually read. Then I pushed it open. The air was still, too still. The kind of still you only get in rooms that haven't been disturbed in decades. Or rooms where people are still waiting for you. The hallway stretched longer than the house should have allowed. On either side were doors. No numbers. Just card slots, like hotel room locks, and above each one a small black dome. Cameras, all aimed slightly downward. I didn't speak. I didn't even breathe loud. I just walked. Halfway down the corridor, I found one door open a sliver. Not wide, just enough to show a slant of light on the carpet. I pushed it gently. Inside was a room no bigger than a walk-in closet. A single chair bolted to the floor, a monitor screen suspended from the ceiling. And on that screen, an episode of Ellen. But it was wrong. The laughter was off, delayed by a beat, or sometimes too early. Ellen would pause for a punchline, smile, and the laugh track would jump in a second too soon. The audience reactions didn't match either. People clapping when nothing was said, mouths moving without sound, some nodding without blinking. The whole thing felt like someone had taken real footage and replaced parts of it, like a memory half remembered. I sat down, I don't know why. The screen flickered, glitched once, and then, for exactly one frame, maybe half a second, Ellen turned, looked straight at the camera. Not the studio camera, this camera. Her head turned unnaturally far, not broken, but wrong. Her eyes didn't blink, her mouth didn't move, just a stare that landed too hard, like it knew I was watching. Then the episode reset. Back to the opening joke. The music played, off-key. I left the room, closed the door behind me, and didn't check the others. My skin itched like I'd been watched for hours. When I made it back to my suite, I locked the door twice. The next morning, I found it, folded neatly on my bed, a black robe. Soft, velvet maybe, no tag, but pinned to the collar was a tiny cream label stitched in perfect handwriting. Wardrobe, segment B, Q4. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared at it like it might move on its own. Door. Nobody had access to my room, no one I knew of. No note, no explanation, just the robe, perfectly my size. I checked the cameras. None pointed at my hallway. I checked the front door. It was locked from inside. The windows hadn't been opened. Something had entered anyway. I started digging. There were blueprints in the estate office, big rolls of paper stored in tubes marked with Ellen's initials. Some of the plans were straightforward: kitchen layout, bedroom wings, security wiring. But one set looked different. Older. Stamped with an architecture firm that shut down back in 2009. These blueprints showed something I hadn't seen before. A sub-level. No stairs, no elevator. Just a note on the east wall. Vault room access, stage alignment only. I ran my finger along the faded lines. There was a signature in the margin. Full room sealed. Don't let her practice alone. I didn't know who JJ was. I didn't know what stage alignment meant. But I knew this wasn't part of the original estate design. I tried to call an old coworker that night, someone who used to handle props on Ellen's set, just to check in, just to ask if he remembered anything weird about her off-camera spaces. The phone rang twice, then clicked. Not voicemail, not dead air. Just a second of white noise, then a voice that wasn't his. Echoed, and then silence. I checked my call log after. It didn't say outgoing, it said returned. I stared at the screen for a long time, then put the phone in the drawer and closed it. The next morning I heard something hit the floor outside my room. A thud, small, like a mug. I opened the door. There was a teacup sitting on the floor. White, porcelain, gold rim. No tray, no tag, just the cup. And it was warm. I hadn't ordered tea. Well, nobody had. I looked down the hallway. Empty. The house was still. The mirrors didn't reflect me. Not right away. Chapter 3. Oprah was always there first. I didn't sleep that night either, not after the cup. I left it outside the door like it might walk away on its own. By morning, it was gone. No ring, no stain, nothing to say it had ever been there. But I could still smell it. Faint honey and heat, like breath trapped in porcelain. The third floor of the house was supposedly just for show. A viewing deck, Ellen's reading lounge, a few bonus guest rooms that hadn't been used in years. I hadn't gone up there much. Most of my tasks were on the first and second floors, and frankly, I was starting to feel like the house had zones, some for movement, some for watching. That upper level, it felt like the kind of space that waits. But that morning, something pulled me up there anyway. I told myself I was checking air filters, said it out loud even, like that would make it real. The lounge was ridiculous. Glass walls on 3 sides, thick beige carpet that left no footprints, and bookshelves filled with titles I'd never heard of. Not just obscure books, manufactured ones. Every single spine was pristine. No wear, no markings. A shelf full of ideas nobody had ever opened. I wasn't looking for anything. I just started pulling books randomly. A few were fake, wooden blocks with cover prints. But one felt heavier than the rest. The Art of Audience Empathy. No author name. I opened it, and a binder dropped out from inside. It landed on the floor with a dull, too-solid thud. No label, no logo, just thick black leather and pages that stuck together slightly from age. Inside were photos, dozens, hundreds maybe, printed on heavy matte paper, taped in with strange care, and every single person in those photos looked like they had just stopped smiling. You know that moment right after the camera flash, when the mouth drops but the eyes haven't moved yet? That split second where people look empty? That was all of them. I flipped through page after page. A-list actors, studio heads, magazine editors, pop singers, billionaires, politicians. Not in public settings either. Private, candid shots. Some in the mansion, some in what looked like set rooms made to look like Ellen's stage. I saw George Clooney leaning on a chair, eyes glazed, Beyoncé mid-blink, arms folded, Spielberg, Kanye, Tyler Perry, Shonda Rhimes, every single one with that same pause in their face, that unfinished expression like they had just been told to hold for the next cue. And the timestamps? So that's what hit me. Some of them were dated way before Ellen was famous, way before her show ever aired. I found one from 1987 labeled Studio Prep. Initial guest review. Oprah was in it. Not center, but near the back, half turned toward the camera, wearing all black. Her smile wasn't finished yet either. The pages toward the back got worse. Photos where the faces were scratched out. Not blacked or blurred, just scratched, like someone couldn't bear to see them. The names underneath were written in fine silver pen, almost proud. But they weren't guest names. They were cue cards. Segment A, laugh rehearsal. Go. Segment C, mirror sync. The legacy audience, Oprah insert 4. I closed the binder. My hands were sweating, but the book itself felt cold, heavier now than it had when I picked it up. I set it on the floor and turned to leave. That's when I noticed the mirror in the corner. It hadn't caught my eye before, too flush with the wall, too clean, but now up close I could see the faint outline of a square fingerprint reader built into the frame. I touched it before I even thought about it. It beeped once. Then the mirror began to slide. Behind it, a small room, maybe 12 feet deep, 6 feet wide, just enough for one person. A single chair sat in the middle, bolted to the floor. Directly across from it was a massive projection screen that covered the far wall. Nothing else, no controls, no lights. Just the chair and the screen, and that weird pressure in the air that always comes right before something bad happens. I sat, of course I did. The lights dimmed without a switch. The screen blinked once, then a video began to play. Oprah. She was seated in the same room I was in now, or one that looked identical. Same lighting, same chair, same screen behind her. But this footage wasn't recent. She looked younger, but not young. Timeless in that way people with handlers look. Her voice was soft, but there was steel behind it. "You don't have to drink to join," she said, "but you do have to rehearse, and we've all rehearsed for her." Behind her, the screen filled with images, a wall of faces, hundreds of them, all smiling, too wide, too static, like they'd been frozen mid-laugh and left there to watch. The faces began flickering, like old TV static. Their features stuttered. Oprah kept speaking, but her voice changed, deepened, then slowed, then reversed, then back to normal, like the recording couldn't stabilize her. I looked at her reflection in the screen. It was smiling before her mouth moved. I stood up. I don't know why. I just needed to move, needed to not be still in that chair like she had been. The smile kept widening. Oprah's real face was calm, poised, but her reflection smiled wider and wider until it stretched almost ear to ear. I hit the wall, no switch, no stop. Then suddenly, the screen went black. Just like that. I stumbled out, slammed the mirror shut behind me, and leaned against the bookshelf. My breath didn't feel like mine. It was shallow, fast, like I'd just run uphill, even though I'd barely moved. The binder was gone. Not moved. Gone. I looked around the lounge. Every book was perfectly aligned again, like the shelf had reset. I left. Fast. Didn't take the stairs. I went straight for the service elevator and rode down in silence. The mirror inside showed my reflection jittering slightly, like it was buffering. When I reached the first floor, I passed the hallway with the main mirror. I didn't want to look. I kept my eyes down, hands in my pockets. But the air in the hall had shifted, cooler somehow, like breath had just been pulled out of it. I glanced, just once, and saw myself, standing, but not alone. There were people behind me. Their shapes were vague, blurred, not quite in focus. But they were there. Some tall, some crouched. A few standing close enough that their shoulders overlapped mine in the glass. But when I turned, the hallway was empty. I ran to my room, locked the door. The robe was still folded on my chair. But now there was something on the bed. A sheet of heavy cream cardstock, handwritten in fine silver ink. Tomorrow's guest rehearsal. You're scheduled to smile. No time, no location, just the instruction. And the word smile was underlined. I turned the card over. On the back was a small stamp, barely visible. A looping letter O. I don't know if it was for Oprah or for Obey. Chapter 4. Her room was never cleaned. I tried to leave that morning. Didn't pack anything. Didn't write a note. Just woke up, pulled on jeans, grabbed my keys, and walked to the car parked out by the hedges. I didn't even look at the windows on the third floor. I didn't want to see if they were watching. I got into the car, slid the key into the ignition. Turned. Nothing. No click, no hum, no dash lights. It wasn't dead. It was like the engine had never existed. I popped the hood. Everything looked right. But when I reached in to check the battery, I felt something strange. Smooth plastic. A blank rectangle where the ignition module should have been. Like it had been cleanly removed. No wires, no marks, just absence. I stood there for a long time, hands braced on the edge of the hood, trying to steady my breath. The house didn't want me to leave, that much was clear. So I gave in. I walked back up the driveway. The air felt warmer now, like someone had exhaled over the whole property. Every window I passed had the curtains drawn back. I could feel it watching. Not through security systems. Not through cameras. The house itself had started to pay attention. I went to the east wing. The sealed door had never quite closed again after the first time I opened it. No matter how hard I pushed, it would leave a crack just wide enough to whisper through. This time, it was waiting. Ellen's personal suite was the last room at the end of the hallway. A gold plate on the door said private rehearsal. No lock, just a push handle. I stepped inside. The room looked untouched. Not dusty, not abandoned, just paused. The bed was made, with corners tucked military tight, pillows fluffed. But when I brushed my fingers across the sheet, it was warm. Not body heat, more like heat from stage lights. 12 suits hung in her walk-in closet, identical cuts, crisp, never worn. Each had a tag pinned to the collar, written in that same precise looping script I'd seen before. Tuesday, audience left. Thursday, twin interview. Silence protocol. Final guest cue. Empty seat segment. One said simply, back up, smile. I didn't touch them. The far wall of the closet had a mirror like the others, but smaller. No frame, just a sheet of perfectly black glass. I leaned in to check my reflection, but there wasn't one. It stayed dark. Then it flickered. A video began to play. No sound. I was watching myself sleep. From last night. From my bed. The angle was high. Too high for any corner camera. The only place that view could have come from was inside the ceiling light. I watched as I turned in bed, muttering something into the sheets. I watched as I sat up suddenly at 3:11 a.m., blinking into the dark, then laid back down. I watched myself reach out to the nightstand and move the guest rehearsal card without ever opening my eyes. I backed away. The video kept playing. I opened the closet door and stepped into the bathroom. The lights turned on without a switch. Soft amber glow. There was a mirror above the sink, but it had a seam along the bottom edge, barely visible unless you were looking for it. I pushed. The panel clicked open. Inside was a sealed plastic envelope. Thick, medical-style laminate, labeled in small, sharp letters. Smile Reset Vials Batch 8. Dozens of tiny glass ampules nestled in a foam insert, each filled with a golden liquid that shimmered even in low light. The color didn't look natural. It looked like it had a weight to it, like it wanted out. I picked one up. It was warm, warmer than the room. The label on the insert said, dosage 1 drop per segment. Administered to Q recipient before reset. Do not ingest without reflection, alignment. There were initials scrawled in the bottom corner. E.D. I set it back. On the counter was a small black notebook, the kind you get from boutique stationery shops. Expensive paper, ribbon bookmark, leather spine. It wasn't hidden, just placed. I opened it. Every page was written in a different hand. Some neat, some rushed, some almost illegible, but every one had the same format. Date, roll, Q, outcome. One read, November 12th, audience monitor, segment B, laughed too early, not asked back. March 3, segment runner, Q3, mirror failed, still waiting. Trance. Jake clenches his teeth, bites them, and fights off deep mourning. One was from someone I remembered. Marla. She used to work props. I'd seen her backstage a few times. February 19, wardrobe prep, segment 4, smile rehearsed. Curtain dropped. I practiced. I smiled. I waited. She still didn't choose me. She believes me. That line repeated dozens of times. I practiced. I smiled. I waited. She still didn't choose me. And it felt like a prayer or a curse. The final page was blank except for one thing. My name. Joy. No Q, no date, no roll. Just my name. I dropped the book. My hand was shaking. I turned to leave, and the mirror flickered again. This time, it wasn't video. It was me, standing in the middle of Ellen's room, surrounded by a group of others, familiar faces, but I couldn't name them. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. Their eyes were wide, unblinking. I saw my mom, Ellen said. Behind them, Ellen's reflection. Not her real face, just her presence. Smiling, waiting. I backed out of the closet, through the suite, into the hallway. The house was too quiet. Even my footsteps felt dampened, like the carpet was swallowing sound. I made it to the guest hall before I heard it. My own voice. Soft, repeating, "Be kind, be kind, be kind." I froze. It was coming from behind a closed mirror door. One I hadn't opened yet. One I hadn't even noticed before. But as I walked toward the door, I pressed my ear to it. Be kind, be kind, be kind. Over and over, my voice echoing like it had been recorded. But I hadn't said it. Not yet. Chapter 5. The audience wasn't fake. It was hungry. It was the kind of morning that feels like a dare. The clouds were low, pale gray, the kind of sky that hangs too heavy for no reason. I didn't eat. I didn't clean. I didn't check the thermostat. I just moved through the house like I was already part of it. The mirrors had stopped glitching. They didn't try to delay my reflection anymore. Now they met me face to face, on time, like they'd stopped pretending. I didn't plan to go looking for the sub-level. I was still trying to convince myself it was a contractor error, an outdated blueprint, a note that never got erased. But when I walked past the secondary hallway behind the formal dining room, I noticed something that hadn't been there the day before. A shelf labeled Props B. I knew the house like a map by now. That shelf hadn't existed, not even a shadow of it. Now it stood at the end of the hall, packed with dusty cue cards, oversized novelty props from past episodes, a single neon sign that read, "You're already smiling." I tugged at the edge of the shelf, expecting it to be bolted, but it slid, smooth and silent, like it wanted to move. Behind it was a narrow doorway I had to duck to enter. The air changed immediately. Damp, stale, too cold for the house's usual 73.3. A spiral staircase led down. Metal, not modern, industrial, like an old boiler room. The kind you find in places that were built to last forever, but never wanted to be visited. I took the steps slowly. Each one hummed a little under my feet. The deeper I went, the more it sounded like applause. Soft, distant, rhythmic. My mind kept translating the sound into hands clapping. But there was no crowd. Not yet. At the bottom, the floor leveled out into a wide, carpeted room. Soft lighting, like a stage pre-show. I froze. It wasn't a storage room. It was an audience chamber. Rows of seats stretched out ahead of me, and in each seat, a mannequin. They were pitch black, smooth, featureless, except for their mouths. Each one was frozen in mid-laugh, stretched open, round and wide, too wide. Their faces were blank ovals, but the mouths were precise, sculpted, teeth perfect, tongues raised as if caught mid-roar. They didn't move, not at first. I stepped onto the aisle carpet and walked toward the stage. There was no host, no spotlights, no cameras. Just that weird hum growing louder. The curtain on stage never opened, but a voice echoed from behind it. Ellen. Not live, not quite recorded either, like something halfway between memory and loop. "You're here, finally, they've been waiting." The mannequins didn't react. "Not yet. You've always been scheduled, you just didn't RSV." I reached the foot of the stage. A podium stood there. Simple, wooden, with a single red folder placed on top. "Segment prep your monologue." I opened it. The pages weren't typed, they were handwritten in my style, my exact phrasing. Words I hadn't spoken out loud in years. Paragraphs about things I never told anyone. My first panic attack at 13. The way my hands shook the night I found out my ex-husband had remarried. The time I almost called out sick and didn't. And then the girl who covered for me disappeared from a different show. Every line of it was familiar and awful. And then the final page. "You've practiced enough. They're ready now." I looked up. The mannequins had started to turn. One by one. Their heads rotated slowly, not mechanically, but too exact to be human. No jerks, no hesitation, like someone had trained them in choreography. The front row turned first, followed by the second, then the third. Each time a new head turned toward me, the sound grew louder. Clapping. No hands moved. But the sound filled the room. I stepped back from the podium. Behind the mannequins, the far wall shimmered. I hadn't noticed it before. It was a mirror. A full seamless mirror that spanned the entire back wall. It didn't show the mannequins. It showed an audience. Real people. Smiling, staring. Some I recognized. Former co-workers. A few celebrities I'd glimpsed in old episodes. One woman I swore I'd seen in a photo from Ellen's private album. And me. I was there too, seated in the front row. Smiling, wider than I ever had, leaning forward, clapping. But I didn't feel my hands move. I blinked. My reflection didn't. In the mirror, I stood and gestured toward the stage. In real life, I backed away. The reflection didn't care. It took its seat again and smiled. The mannequins kept turning. Now they were all facing me. The stage curtain never opened. Ellen's voice came again from every speaker, every corner. You're not here to be seen. You're here to be remembered. A whisper followed it, a second voice layered underneath. And remembering takes practice. I turned to leave, but the stairs were gone. Not blocked, just gone, replaced by another row of seats. All empty, waiting. The folder in my hand had changed. The pages were blank now, except for one line. Laugh when you start. Behind me, the mannequins had leaned forward. Not all the way, just enough to show they were listening. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I sat in the empty chair nearest me and held the folder like a script. In the mirror, the audience applauded. They weren't clapping for the story. They were clapping because I'd stayed. Chapter 6. Smile protocol was not optional. I woke up on a couch I didn't recognize. The air was too cold, not the usual steady hum of 73.3. This was clinical, metallic, like a hospital vent trying to sanitize grief. I tried to sit up, but my body felt heavy, not tired, weighted, like someone had taken my spine and swapped it for iron. I reached for my face, rubbed my cheeks. That's when I noticed it. I was smiling. Not a twitch, not a half-dream smirk, a full, static grin stretching from one side of my face to the other. My lips were dry, my jaw ached. I tried to frown, but my muscles refused to respond. My skin stayed pinned in that expression, wide, obedient, wrong. I looked down at my left arm. There was a puncture mark, faint but fresh. A shimmer of gold clung to the skin around it. Not blood, something thicker, warmer. One of the vials. Someone had used one. I sat up fast and nearly fell. The room swayed. The lighting buzzed overhead, pale and unfriendly. I was in a dressing room, one of the ones Ellen used for pre-show prep. Same cream upholstery, same backlit mirror, same faint smell of hair product, and silence. The robe I'd left folded days ago was now hanging on the back of the door, clean, pressed, ready. Pushed into the edge of the vanity mirror was a card. I peeled it loose. Rehearsal, schedule, week 5. Underneath, printed in sharp black ink. Dated host Joy. Segment A, guest welcome. Guest. Segment B, monologue rewrite, approved. Segment C, mirror roundtable. Segment D, audience playback. I ran my finger under each line. Where Ellen's name had once been, mine now lived. No camera, no crew, no cue cards, and yet I was scheduled. I opened the vanity drawer. Inside were blotting papers, smile correctors, and a small bottle labeled Lip Tension Rebalancer, segment safe. The mirror's surface shimmered again. Not flickered, shimmered. My reflection was already sitting straighter than I was, already smiling wider, already nodding like the first joke had landed. I backed away, and the lights above the mirror turned a warmer hue. Applause. I didn't hear it with my ears. I felt it in the walls, the subtle shift of space congratulating me for existing. I stepped into the hallway. The lights came on in sequence, first to last, a soft delay between each, like they were tracking my pace. With every step, I heard it again. Applause. Not recorded, not looped. Responsive. I lifted a hand to rub my forehead, and the lights near the entryway brightened. A light cue, the kind you'd give a host when the audience needed to clap louder. I stood still, raised both arms. The air buzzed harder. The house was treating me like I'd been hired. Worse cast. I tried to cry, but nothing moved in my face. Not a twitch. My eyes burned, but no tears came. My lips stayed in that upward lock, a freeze frame of joy with no cause. Made it to the study near the West Lounge, the drawer I'd never opened, one marked development room with an old security key still taped to the top, was slightly open. Inside was a single file folder, thick, red, labeled in handwritten script. Season reboot, Shadow Host approved. I opened it. The first page was a headshot. Javier, smiling, natural, or so it looked, stamped across the bottom. Declined rehearsal. Next page, Lenny, same stamp. Then Daniel. And after that, Marla. Faces I knew, people I'd passed in studios, people I'd once laughed with in line at craft services, all of them marked with the same phrase, declined rehearsal. Some had an additional note. Mere failed, replacement pending. The last page was blank. No headshot. Just one line at the top. Current host candidate, J. The rest of the name was smeared, but it didn't need to be finished. The folder began to warm in my hand. Not from the lights, from inside. I dropped it. The air in the study dimmed. For a full second, every bulb in the chandelier above buzzed out, then back on. Applause. Soft, steady, from nowhere. I turned to leave. The mirror above the fireplace caught me. This time, it didn't wait. It showed me on stage, smiling, low-tide. The robe replaced with a black suit, perfectly fitted. The background was familiar. Ellen's old set, but bleached of color, just grays and whites. I stood at center stage, nodding, waving. Oh wait, I hadn't moved. But in the reflection, I bowed. Slowly, deliberately. I clutched my jaw, trying to scream. The sound caught behind my teeth. My throat worked, but nothing broke free. My face wouldn't unfreeze. The house didn't care. The hallway lights dimmed again. End of segment. Chapter 7. The cup was never for her. I didn't walk to the ballroom. I was led there. Not by people, not by hands, but by the house itself. Every hallway light blinked in rhythm, urging me forward. Every door I passed cracked open just enough to whisper breathless nothing. I didn't touch the walls, but they felt close. Closer than they had any right to be. Like the house was narrowing as I moved, sharpening. I'd been there before, the ballroom. That room that pretended to be empty, that faked silence like applause was only waiting for the right cue. I'd seen the others once, statuesque, silent, framed in stillness. But that was before I knew what they were. This time they weren't still. I opened the ballroom doors, and the air hit me like a soundless scream. They were already there. Oprah, Jay-Z, Spielberg, a few others I recognized from older shows. People you don't forget, even if they've tried to forget you. But they weren't them anymore. Not exactly. Not the way I remembered. If the memory. They stood along the walls, spaced evenly like set design. Their eyes were black now, not hollow, not bleeding, just unlit. No shine, no white, a matte void that didn't blink. And their smiles? You'd look at them, and their faces would stay still for a second too long. Then their mouths would curl upward, slow and obedient, like someone had cued the animation out of sync. They didn't speak, didn't move, just stood in formation like the audience from the sublevel. Except these weren't mannequins. They were watching me. At the far end of the room, the mirrors moved. Not swung, not slid, moved. Across every pane of glass, Ellen appeared. Not once, not twice, dozens of times. Each mirror had a version of her. Some walking, some waving, some seated on stools, smiling that wide, waxy grin that never broke. She wasn't in the room. She was in the reflections, moving in every direction at once, gliding from one edge to the next. No steps, no footsteps, just presence. I stepped forward, and every Ellen in every mirror turned her head at the exact same angle. They were waiting. At the center of the floor, placed on a pedestal that hadn't been there a second ago, was the cup. White porcelain, gold rim, no chip, no mark, just pristine, gleaming, and steaming. Omi, the liquid inside wasn't tea. It wasn't gold like before. It was clearer now, watery, but shifting. When I leaned over it, I saw my face. Not reflected, swirling. My eyes, my mouth, smiling. It smiled before I did. My knees nearly buckled. I reached out, without meaning to. My fingers curled around the handle. It was hot, not burn hot, just aware. The room dimmed slightly, but not from the lights, from the sound. It began like breath, then whisper, then chant. Be kind, be kind, be kind. Over and over, in perfect rhythm. No rise, no fall, no emotion, just instruction. Be kind, be kind, be kind. The mirrors pulsed with it. The Ellen reflections moved their mouths in unison. Their eyes flickered with static. Their smiles twitched, wider each time. The celebrities behind me joined in. Be kind, be kind, be kind. But then, under it, another voice. Lower, rougher, like a voice through cracked glass. Teach, rehearse, obey. It crawled underneath the chant, nesting in it. I raised the cup. My hand shook, but my face, still stuck in that grin, didn't move. I tried to breathe through my mouth. My jaw refused to open. The rim touched my lip. The reflection in the tea tilted its head. Then something grabbed my wrist. Cold fingers. Not strong, but final. I looked up. In the mirror beside me, my reflection was no longer following. It was leading. It smiled. It mouthed the words. This isn't your moment. Then leaned closer. Into your replacements. My hand jerked back. The cup slipped. No, but it didn't shatter. It froze midair. Suspended. Rotating slowly like it was being held in place by applause. The chant continued. The room spun. Not with motion, but with versions of me, of her, of them. Every mirror now held a different person, or maybe the same person in different uniforms. I saw Lenny, still smiling. Abia, clapping with empty eyes. Daniel wearing my suit. And Ellen everywhere. She didn't drink. She never did. She poured. The room began to glow from beneath the floorboards, a soft pulse like a heartbeat about to flatline. I tried to step back, but the floor gave slightly. Not soft, responsive, like I'd stepped onto a stage that had memorized me. The cup rose again, back to its pedestal. The steam curled upward in a spiral. Inside it, I saw my face again, and behind it, hers. He whispered through all of them at once. Drink, smile, and teach. It turned and ran, but the mirrors followed. They didn't walk. They watched. Every step I took, my reflection bowed. Every exit I passed, my reflection smiled wider. The ballroom doors opened as I reached them, but only because they wanted me to leave. Not to escape, to prepare. Chapter 8. You didn't work in the house. The house worked on you. You were never supposed to stay this long. That's the first thing the house decides when the loop finishes its final pass. The playback stalls for one beat. Just one. Enough to register that Joy made it all the way through. Enough to flag her behavior as unusual. She ran, she returned, she refused, she rehearsed. That last part was the only one that mattered. The house has no heartbeat, but its wiring stirs like breath now. A soft pulsing behind the walls, the ducts, the mirror seams. HVAC units hum in harmony, lighting relays shift from sensor to override. The hallway temperatures restabilize, 73.3 degrees, exact. A robe is already laid out on the guest suite bed. Not Joy's. Larger. The stitching is tighter this time. A firmer weave. The label sewn into the collar is blank. Waiting. On the foyer bench, a small envelope has been placed. No stamp, no pen, just embossed lettering on cream cardstock. Thank you for attending your pre-appointment. Full taping scheduled upon viewer recognition. Joy no longer opens doors herself. The doors anticipate her. Her hands hover near the handle and the knob turns before she can grip it. Mirrors adjust their tilt for optimal framing. Motion lights no longer blink to life. They glow at full brightness when she breathes. In the ballroom, the stage resets again. The pedestal reforms in silence. The teacup reappears, not carried, not poured, returned. Inside the cup, the liquid no longer reflects Joy's face. It shows the sequence, like a short film flickering across the surface. Every person who stood where she stands now. Faces strained, eyes wide, smiles struggling to take shape before they dissolved completely. Joy's file has been completed, stamped, sealed. Segment complete, smile protocol engaged. In the guest directory, her name is no longer listed under staff. It's listed under legacy host, shadow accepted. In the lower archives, a file pings to life. Season reboot log open. The house begins broadcasting. Not on television, not through satellite, through memory. Somewhere, maybe on the East Coast, maybe down the street. From where you're listening right now, your phone vibrates, but there's no notification. Your screen lights up with a glitch you dismiss as a software hiccup. The time flickers once, then stabilizes. You think nothing of it, but the memory's already been seeded. Joy moves like a segment now. Her steps are beats. Her breath is applause. She nods not out of habit, but because she's waiting for the lighting cue to rise across the mirrors. There are so many mirrors. Too many, really. More than she remembers cleaning. More than the floor plan ever suggested. The house makes space for them now, curving the hallways slightly where they used to be straight, narrowing the ceiling slopes so each room feels just a little more cinematic. She stands in the foyer and tilts her head. The mirror shows her smiling. She isn't. But the smile in the reflection is perfect, luminous, reverent. The mirror smiles first now, and she follows. In a small mailroom under the west wing, a room never marked on blueprints, never used by delivery staff, a box slides down a chute. It hits the floor with no sound. Inside is another cup, identical, immaculate. But this time, the cup doesn't wait to be lifted. It tilts itself slightly to the side, showing its contents to the air. Not liquid, a face. You remember the story by now, don't you? Joy used to work in lighting. Well, she needed the job. She didn't drink. She waited. She obeyed. And then, She smiled. That's what you remember, but it's not all of it. Because the version you're remembering is the playback the house wanted you to receive. Clean, linear, digestible. The kind of horror you can process in a single scroll, a single click, a single story. But the real ending? That's happening now. Not to Joy, to you. The cup is no longer in the house. It's at your doorstep. Not literally, not yet. But the invitation has been sent. You've already received it. It's in the form of a whisper you thought was your own thought. It's in the moment you glanced at your reflection last night and paused, just long enough to wonder why your eyes looked so tired. It's in that one dream you forgot upon waking, but left you with a low, syrupy feeling in your chest. But that the dream? It was her. The mirrors in the house are tracking the next candidate now. Joy's no longer on the stage, she's in the frame. In the playback chamber beneath the sublevel, her reflection has been integrated, not replaced, absorbed. She bows on cue now. She claps at the correct timestamp. She doesn't speak unless spoken through. The stage is clear. The seat, still warm. The house doesn't want another Ellen. It never did. She was a vessel, a reflection bright enough to teach obedience, rehearsed enough to seem original. Gone now, but not absent. Her code was archived. Her protocol, repurposed. You think you're safe because you're not in Los Angeles, because you never worked on the show, because you're just listening. But that's where you're wrong. Because watching is part of the rehearsal. Clicking? That's acceptance. Smiling? That's memory compliant. In the sub-level archive, a new guest list is being compiled. A technician logs into the panel. No name, just a breath in human shape. The system prompts. Entered new host data. It types slowly. One name. Yos. The mirror scans for compatibility. The smile detected. Loop available. The house begins prepping again. The robe size matches your shoulders. The teacup calibrates for your emotional weight. The reflection rehearses your gestures one frame ahead of you. Your voice will soon say words you haven't heard yet, but when they arrive, they'll fit, like a memory you forgot to have. Joy watches from the inner frame now. She's not behind glass. She is the glass. A new message appears at the edge of her vision. Repair Vealer, begin closure line. She turns to camera, which isn't a camera. It's you. You think this story ends. It loops. Every telling is a rehearsal. Every listener is a reflection. You? You clicked. He scrolled. He waited. He watched. He smiled. He rehearsed. Welcome to your taping.